Hey folks, NEPHILIMFREE here. In this hangout, should I get some people to join, I'm going to debunk some myths about evolution. There are a number of myths, quite a few, about evolution that are really propagated by the ignorance of the general public relating to the subject. People hear scientists who believe in evolution say a thing, and then they swallow it because they accept the authority of the scientist. And then they hear one of these myths from someone who believes evolution, a member of the general public, and having heard it, they come to believe it too. But they do so because they're ignorant of the facts relating to the myth. They don't understand why it's actually a myth, and it's not science. I'm going to go over some of the myths of evolution theory and explain why they're myths and they're not science. Here are a few of those things that I'll likely discuss. Myth number one: computer simulations prove evolution theory. Scientists will say, we can simulate evolution in a computer with our models, and this demonstrates how evolution happens. That's a myth. Another myth is that all scientists agree that evolution is a fact. That's not true. There are many thousands of scientists who don't believe in evolution. Another myth: antibiotic resistance is evidence of evolution in action. Also a myth. Natural selection is evolution in action. That's also a myth. Another myth is that we should not be able to see evolution happening because it happens too slowly. Notice how that contradicts the claim of antibiotic resistance as being evidence of evolution. We can see that happen, but then in general, evolutionists will say we should not be able to see evolution happening, and they're relating, really what they're speaking of is the structural design changes, the anatomical changes that evolution would produce had evolution been true. We can't see that because it happens too slowly. That's a myth. There are clear transitional fossils. That's another myth. The fossils are organized in the order in which organisms evolved into existence. That's another myth. Vestigial features, that is, a feature that's no longer useful or has diminished functionality in an organism, is evidence of evolution. That's a myth too. Another myth is that homologous structures or comparative anatomy shows evidence of past evolution. That is, that because one creature has this type of bone or structure in their body plan and another type of creature has it, this is evidence of common ancestry. It's evidence of evolution has taken place in the past, such as the bones in the wings of a bird. They have 4 limbs, right? Well, frogs have 4 limbs too. So they both have femurs and tibia and this kind of bones. So they're or anterior limbs, legs. This is evidence that evolution has produced them, and this divergence is evidence of common ancestry. That's a myth. Another myth is that mutations design biological features and functions. That's a myth. Here's a big one, and lots of people believe this because they've been told and they've seen animations on TV produced by secular media companies that fish begat land-dwelling creatures over time. That fish crawled out onto land, not actually the fish, but the ancestors of fish. I mean the offspring. And through successive generations, fish begat creatures that lived on land and walked around with legs and had bones. That's a myth. Ape and human DNA similarities show evidence of a recent common ancestor for man and apes. That's a myth. Phylogenetics create a picture of evolution. That's a myth. Phylogenetics is organizing creatures in an imaginary tree of life according to their genetic similarity to other creatures. The belief system of the evolutionist is that genetic similarities between two different types of living creature are evidence that they have a common ancestor, that they're closely related or more distantly related, depending on how genetically similar they are. That's a myth. And here's another. Life arose in a warm pond. This was Charles Darwin's idea. He didn't really discuss it in any depth. He simply mentioned it as an aside in one of his books, that there was a warm pond, maybe, where life began, some chemical soup. That idea was leaped on by many scientists afterward, and now we have this abiogenesis myth. That's a myth. And also, proteins evolve by mutation. They gain new functions, new proteins arise, because mutations create new proteins, a new protein function. That's a myth. So these are some of the myths that I'll be discussing in this hangout, should I get some people to join.